Hello viewers, in this particular lecture on immunology, which is a part of microbiology, where I will be mainly discussing the historical development of the subject of immunology. Now what is immunology? It is a science by which our body produces different defense related cells or antibodies, and these actually help in combating infection caused by different pathogenic organisms. And it is not only by means of medicines and antibiotics we survive, but it is also because of these natural killer cells or antibodies or some defense related protein we get cured. And if this defense system is collapsing, then naturally even medicines also cannot act on us. Now, considering the history of immunology, which is really very vast, I cannot really discuss each individual aspects of immunological development, but I have selected some major incidents, some major discoveries which has really actually resulted in the present day immunological science or immunology subject. Now, in this first lecture, I shall be mainly discussing the different aspects from the period of 1718 till 1942. Now, actually, it was Lady Montagu, who was the wife of the British ambassador in Constantinople. She had an observation. She saw that certain prisoners who were suffering from mild infection of variola, which is smallpox virus, were actually not being infected by this deadly disease later on. So naturally, this variolation became a phenomenon by which people got cured from the severe disease of smallpox. But look at this particular phenomenon. This infection was through skin. So later on, people infected intentionally with variola and they called it variolation, and they developed some scar mark, which became a fashionable incident in the medieval Europe. But it was much later, maybe it was in 1796, the father of immunology, who was Dr. Edward Jenner, he had a very good observation. He observed that people who are engaged in cow business or milking the cow, they suffered from a disease of cowpox. But these people, they never really had this infection of smallpox. So accordingly, he actually did a unique experiment where he collected the fluid from the pustule of a milkmaid called Sarah Names and injected it to a boy called James Phipps. And later on, when the disease of smallpox was introduced to this boy, he was not infected. So naturally, this particular vaccination came into existence, and he is the father of vaccination, and naturally vacca, the word vaccine came from this vacca meaning cow. But much later on, it was in 1840, this person who is Jacob Henle, he actually gave a theory which is called contagium vivum, meaning that for every infection there must be some fluid coming from an organism, and this fluid can be protein associated with the cytosol or the membrane. So it is not the organism which causes infection, but it is the infection which is caused by the contagious fluid present in the organism. It was Ernst Haeckel, much later in 1862. He is famous as an ecologist, but he also gave a unique phenomenon which is called phagocytosis. Now, phagocytosis is a phenomenon by which a cell will take up a solid particle. It can be a food material, it can be a bacteria, and destroy it. Now, the moment the particle enters the cell, it is engulfed within the vacuole, and then the lysosome comes in and will digest the particle. So these are the different types of phagocytosis or material entering the body. Mainly this is phagocytosis, where you can see this phagocytic vesicle created, or sometimes you can see this plasma membrane going inside and this water molecule entering along with ions, which is pinocytosis. But what is important, that phagocytosis can be targeted. That is, it will take place at certain point where there are some specific receptor. And in immunology, we are actually considering this receptor-mediated endocytosis as a mechanism by which a particular pathogen will bind with a specific receptor and get inside the cell. And this is how, when this is getting inside the cell, there is the phenomenon of destruction. And so these are the primary steps of phagocytosis. The ligand coated particle is coming in. It is binding with the receptor. It can be a specific receptor which can be denoting proto-oncogene, the SRC receptor, say for example. And as the ligand coated particle gets in, the cell will engulf it. So phagocytosis sometimes can actually induce some problem associated with the cell, which can be even cancer. But this entire phenomenon was explained by Ernst Haeckel in the form of phagocytosis. Though this development took place much later on. Joseph Lister, I am naming him because of a different reason. In 1867, he actually did observe a unique thing. What was that? That surface sterilization of different hospital equipment with carbolic acid or phenol can reduce the rate of death really by 50 to 60%. This was mainly because of surface sterilization. So that means what? This is a type of what is called antiseptic surgery. So he was later named as the father of antiseptic surgery. But it was Paul Ehrlich who was in 1877. He did different types of work, but one important work that he discovered the existence of a unique type of cell inside our body below the skin, which is called mast cell. And he named it mastocytes or labrocytes. These mastocytes, actually these are the mast cells, you can see granulated mast cells, which are very important for the production of histamine or for the production of an anticoagulant heparin. So these mastocytes are very important for combating different infection. But it was a famous microbiologist, Louis Pasteur, who did a series of experiments and discovered several things. One important discovery was the discovery of germ theory. That means for every disease, there is a pathogen involved. And because of this discovery, he could explain the different ways of rabies transmission, the ways of cholera transmission in chicken. As he understood the mechanism of disease development, he also could actually suggest some method by which it can be prevented. And accordingly, he developed the idea or developed the technique of producing vaccine against chicken cholera. You can see this is the aged cholera bacterium which was injected, and later on this particular chicken was free from cholera. But fresh culture, when it was injected in a fresh chicken, it will have the cholera, but already the chicken who was infected with a aged culture never developed the sign. So what does it mean? It means the chicken who has received the previous less infective cholera bacteria has actually developed some mechanism by which they could protect themselves from the future infection of cholera. So this was a very remarkable idea, and he actually developed the same phenomenon in anthrax. You know, in anthrax disease caused by Bacillus anthracis. And there also this attenuated type of bacteria was used, and it was actually injected, and ultimately it will work in the development of some defense related cells, which are antibodies now we know, of course, and ultimately they will protect the human body from future anthrax infection. But the most important discovery after this chicken cholera vaccine and the anthrax vaccine in 1881, in 1885, Louis Pasteur along with his follower, they inoculated a boy with the rabies vaccine, and his follower Emil Rowe is actually injecting this rabies vaccine to this boy Joseph Meister. Now what was that? He examined that this particular attenuated virus, when injected to this boy, later on when this severe infection comes in, he will be saved. Now the story is something different. Actually, Joseph Meister at that time, he was bitten by a mad dog, and you know they carried the rabies virus. So this boy could have developed rabies. So anyway, they had no future. The family understood that the boy would anyhow die. So they brought him to Pasteur Institute, where Emil Rowe injected 8 to 10 times this type of attenuated virus fluid to this boy. And ultimately, this boy was saved from this particular rabies infection in future. So naturally, this is the first important way of developing therapeutic vaccination against a dreadful disease to which human had no answer basically, because rabies means death. So naturally, this is a very important discovery of Pasteur and his followers.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
How is immunity achieved when attenuated vaccines are given to the body?
You see, when the vaccine is given, it is a protein. So naturally, this protein will act as an antigen and it will activate several cells which are the T cells. So activation of these T cells or the helper T cells will result in the production of multiple antibody, and at a later time when this antigen is entering, they cannot spread. So basically, you are increasing the preparedness by injecting this fluid. In 1888, George Nuttall actually developed a concept. He showed that our blood contains different phenomena by which they will produce different antibacterial protein. So this phenomenon was called the bactericidal action of blood. And naturally now we know that there are different protein like histamine and other different hypersensitive protein which will reduce the growth of bacteria in human blood. So the originator was Nuttall. In 1890, it was von Behring and Kitasato Shibasaburo, he was a Japanese scientist. They denoted that there is a specific protein molecule in the form of antibody produced in our body when we are injected with the toxin or the bacterial toxin of tetanus and diphtheria. And this phenomenon, they actually called it adaptive immunity. Now what is adaptive immunity? By exposing this particular protein, you are producing humoral immunity, which is direct immunity through the activation of B lymphocytes, or it can be activation of T cell, which ultimately will result in cell-mediated immunity. Of course, humoral immunity is direct immunity, cell-mediated immunity is indirect immunity, but it takes time, but it is more effective. But this phenomenon of adaptive immunity was denoted by Kitasato and of course von Behring. In 1891, it was Robert Koch who actually showed that hypersensitivity is not an immediate phenomenon. The moment there is a protein entering, there will not be hypersensitivity. It is a delayed phenomenon. So these are the stages when the antigen is injected in the subcutaneous tissue. There will be the specific T cells which will be activated. Of course, the concept of T cells was not there though. And ultimately there will be recruitment of the phagocytes which will result in the destruction of the injected cell or the cell which has entered the human body. So this resulted in hypersensitivity, because you cannot only kill the infected cell, you have to kill the infected tissue. So when the infected tissue has to be destroyed, there will be some severe chemical reaction, and that actually brings about the hypersensitivity. Now, Jules Bordet is remembered for a different reaction. In 1896, he discovered a process called complement reaction. Now, complement reaction, now we know, is a reaction which involves multiple protein. It involves as much as 25 different proteins, but all these proteins are activated one after another. And this is called a reaction cascade. And this cascade is setting in, and this is what is called complement reaction. So you can see the complement protein is activated when there is first binding of the antigen with the surface antibody, followed by this complement cascade. One after another, you can see one protein and the next protein and the third protein. Primary, secondary, tertiary proteins are activated, and ultimately there will be the destruction of the cell. So this type of complement reaction actually follows two specific pathways. One is the classical pathway, which is mediated by the C3 protein receptor, and the other one is the non-C3 process where there is no specific C3 receptor. But this complement reaction is a very important phenomenon denoted by Podet. We have seen that antigen will bind with antibody. This antigen-antibody binding actually was denoted by Ehrlich in 1900. And actually he showed that this type of antigen-antibody binding takes place on the surface. So basically, if the antibody is located on the surface of the receptor cell, then this particular antigen will come and bind with it. So this antigen-antibody binding phenomenon was suggested by Ehrlich in 1900. But in 1901, a totally different phenomenon which actually involved the different protein present in human blood was denoted. By whom? By Karl Landsteiner. Landsteiner, he actually developed or classified human blood into three basic types. They are blood group A, blood group B, and blood group O. But later on, he also showed that there is a fourth blood group, which is AB system, formed by the expression of both A and B system. Now normally, A type of blood group will always have A agglutinogen or antigen, and will have B agglutinin or beta agglutinin or antibody. Similarly, B blood group will have the B agglutinogen or antigen and will have the alpha antibody. But when it is AB blood group, both A and B antigen or agglutinogen is present, but it will not have any agglutinin. And O blood group will have no antigen, but will have both alpha and beta antibody. So this basic classification was given by Landsteiner, and accordingly human blood group was developed. Of course, this blood group AB later on got the phenomenon of universal recipient because it had both A and B agglutinogen, and blood group O got the concept of universal donor because they are having both A and B antibody. Though this particular concept later on was discontinued because blood group reaction are more specific. That's why now we suggest that if you need blood group A, you should take a donor who is having blood group A. Much later, it was in 1902, Potier and Richet developed the concept of anaphylactic reaction. What is anaphylactic reaction? Anaphylactic reaction is because of the entry of some antigen or a foreign protein. Whenever this protein enters our body, there will be some reaction, and this reaction will result in the production of some antibody. Here in this case it is immunoglobulin E, and this immunoglobulin E complex will result in, this is how the immunoglobulin E binding takes place with the surface binding antigen, and it will activate series of reaction like production of histamine, production of lymphokine, production of serotonin, production of eicosanoids. So different types of reaction is there. Ultimately, it will bring about vasoconstriction, and there will be some severe allergic reaction. Like say for example, in a food where some allergen is present, I will develop some skin rash or redness which is due to this anaphylactic reaction. Right?
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
What are these toxic eicosanoids?
You see, it is coming from a very essential fatty acid called arachidonic acid. So it is a 20 carbon fatty acid, arachidonic acid, which is unsaturated fatty acid, polyunsaturated fatty acid, that produce these eicosanoids. And because of the production of these eicosanoids, there will be inflammation, and there will be redness, there will be severe chemical reaction. So it is a part of this cascade which actually has been initiated by the binding of the antigen with the IgE antibody. In 1905, Pirquet and Schick take the clue from the discovery of Potier, that is some anaphylactic reaction in blood. And this type of reaction, they named it as serum sickness-like reaction. And you can see in this particular graph, whenever the foreign serum is injected in the blood, gradually the protein in the foreign serum will go down. But as it goes down, there will be antibody produced, and this antibody concentration will go up. So this intermediate reaction actually is the antigen-antibody complex, and it will develop in the form of this serum sickness-like reaction.
Sir, I have a question. What are the symptoms of serum sickness?
You see, whenever a protein is entering into blood, there will be antibody production. So there will be this hypersensitivity. So that is the biggest symptom, hypersensitive reaction. That will lead to fever, and that will also lead to reaction in the lymph node. So there will be enlargement of the lymph node, which is commonly called lymphadenitis. And in severe cases, there may be some associated symptoms like vasculitis or arthritis or even nephritis. So there may be a different types of symptom which can be there due to this serum sickness like reaction, right? Now, it was in 1909, it was Paul Ehrlich again who denoted a unique phenomenon called immune surveillance. Now, immune surveillance against cancer. Whenever there is a growth in our body, whenever there is a tumor in our body, that also will result in the production of antibody. And this is what is called immune surveillance against tumor cells. And this type of surveillance can be of three types. Primary surveillance, where there will be activation of the dendritic cells and the initial lymphocytes will go up, followed by the secondary surveillance, where the different sets of immune cells or T lymphocytes or memory cells will go up, and finally it will be all the lymph nodes which will be enlarged, and there will be the enlargement of this lymph node, which we can call it the third or the tertiary immune surveillance against tumor. So this method was denoted by Ehrlich. It was in 1907 Landsteiner again discovered a molecule, a protein called haptane. Now haptane, he actually showed it is not really an antigen, but it has the same reaction like antigen. It will bind to an antibody and actually it will transport, it will be attached to some carrier molecule, and it will be going from one particular place of the body to some other place. So thereby this immune reaction will spread, and in fact there will be specific immune blocker which will also block this haptane reaction, or it will reduce the immune sensitivity. So haptanes are very important for antigen antibody binding. In 1938, it was John Marak who showed that antibody, which more or less looks like a Y-shaped structure, is having a specific site which is called the antigen binding site. And this antigen binding site is responsible for the binding of specific antigen, and thereby we can say that this antigen binding site will specify the antibody to which antigen it will bind with. It was in 1940, a follower of Landsteiner, Wiener, along with Landsteiner of course, discovered a unique protein which is called the Rh protein. This Rh protein actually originated from monkey, but it was discovered also in human serum. So it is called the Rh factor. And this rhesus monkey factor is present in about 85% of individual and is absent in only 15% individual. The one which is having this Rh factor are called Rh positive. The one which is not having is called Rh negative. Now there was a unique phenomenon in this particular Rh factor. What is the significance? The significance is that, say for example, if the mother is Rh negative and she bears a child who is Rh positive, then at the time of the delivery of the first child, there will be the anti-Rh positive antibody generated in mother's blood. Why? Because the mixing of the fetus's blood along with mother's blood takes place during the end of labor. And then this antibody which is present in the mother's blood, when at the time of second time pregnancy, during childbirth, this antibody will enter into the blood cell or enter into the blood of the fetus, and it will destroy the RBC. And this type of reaction is called erythroblastosis fetalis, and it will result in the death of the second child. So that is why it is said that Rh negative mother should not marry Rh positive man preferably. But of course there are certain means. So can you tell me what are the means of this avoiding? How can you avoid this particular disease of erythroblastosis fetalis? Is there any mechanism? I will tell you. This particular mechanism is when a particular person is injected with the anti-D injection, meaning that Rh positive, anti-Rh positive antibody which is generated in a person, in the mother, is now destroyed because of this injection. So naturally, next time the mothers get pregnant, automatically this particular child, as the previous case, will have a normal delivery.